All right, let's take a trip back in time, way back to the 19th century, to explore a scientific theory that you have almost certainly never heard of. And look, this isn't just some small, quirky idea. This is a complete, totally interconnected, and frankly, astonishing alternate reality, all cooked up by one man who decided to rewrite the fundamental laws of the universe.
So let's just dive right in with his most shocking claim. What if everything you think you know about the sun is just wrong? What if instead of a blazing ball of fire, it was actually a cool, dark sphere? Maybe even a place where life could exist? Well, that was the incredible conclusion a doctor came to back in 1878. And believe me, that was only the very beginning of his wild new vision for the cosmos. So, who was the man behind this unbelievably audacious theory? His name was Dr. Henry Raymond Rogers, and in his own words, he just couldn't bring himself to accept the science of his day. He felt this profoundest sense of duty to question absolutely everything, even if it meant he was the lone voice against the entire scientific community. He wasn't trying to tweak a few equations here and there, he was building a whole new reality from the ground up. And that's exactly what he did. He put it all down in a book, a completely different system of physics, a universe where every single force, from sunlight to gravity to the wind, was all connected in a way that nobody had ever imagined. This wasn't just a strange idea about the sun. No, this was his grand, unified theory of everything, designed to completely replace the science of the 19th century. So, how in the world did he make all these pieces fit together? Well, at the very heart of his universe was a single powerful concept, the grand magnetic circuit. As he saw it, this one thing was the engine driving pretty much every single thing that happens in the cosmos.
You know, the biggest problem Dr. Rogers had with the physics of his era was just how wasteful it all seemed. I mean, think about it. A sun just blasting an unbelievable amount of heat and light into the empty, cold void of space. To him, that seemed ridiculously inefficient. It felt like it completely violated a core principle, the conservation of force. He thought, if the sun is constantly giving away all this energy, it has to be getting something back, right?
And his solution was, you have to admit, pretty clever. In his universe, there's no waste at all. Instead, the sun and the earth are like partners in a cosmic dance, locked in this constant two-way exchange of energy. Nothing is ever lost to the void because it's all part of this perfect, closed circuit. It's a loop of cosmic teamwork.
So what's actually flowing through this grand circuit of his? Rogers gave it a name, the vito-magnetic fluid. This was his secret sauce. This subtle, life-giving energy was, he believed, the source of literally everything. Light, heat, gravity, maybe even life itself. So you're going to want to keep that term in mind because in Rogers' universe, that fluid is the key to it all.
Okay, so if the sun is cool and dark, and this mysterious fluid is powering everything, then what about the two most obvious things we get from the sun, light and heat? Well, this is where his theory really takes a turn into the bizarre.
So, forget everything you've been taught. In Rogers' model, the sun doesn't actually make light. No. Instead, the enormous space between us and the sun is just filled with that vital magnetic fluid. And what we call sunlight is just our experience of being inside this gigantic river of energy. The sun only looks bright to us because we're looking at it through all of this illuminated fluid.
And he said the exact same thing about heat. The sun isn't hot. Heat doesn't travel millions of miles through space to warm up the Earth. Instead, heat is generated right here in our own atmosphere. It's a byproduct of the interaction between the sun's energy current and our planet. As he put it, they work together like a great sun battery.
So how does this whole circuit actually work? Well, according to Rogers, it's a three-step process. First, that vito-magnetic fluid flows from the sun and hits the Earth around the equator. Second, that current then travels across the surface of the planet, heading towards the poles. And now for the kicker, the most brilliant part of his theory. The aurora borealis, the northern lights, he said that's the visible proof. It's the return current, completing the circuit as it flows from our poles all the way back to the sun. Okay, so once you buy into this whole grand circuit idea, a whole bunch of other scientific puzzles suddenly seem to have a brand new explanation. Rogers used this one central concept to explain some of the most basic forces we experience, including gravity and even the weather.
Forget what Newton told you. For Dr. Rogers, gravity wasn't some separate, mysterious force. It was just another side effect of his grand circuit.
He believed the constant flow of that vito-magnetic fluid essentially turned the sun and the Earth into two giant magnets, holding each other in place. So the very same current that gives us light and heat also creates the gravity that holds us in orbit.
And what about wind? Well, Rogers would tell you it's got nothing to do with temperature changes or air pressure. He saw the wind as a purely magnetic event. It was just the vito-magnetic fluid itself pushing our atmosphere around to keep everything in balance within the Great Circuit. So get this, it's not the air moving on its own, it's the invisible fluid that's pushing the air.
And he pointed to things like the massive hurricane in Barbados back in 1831 as proof. He described these unbelievable electrical storms, lightning flashing everywhere, the ground itself trembling. And then, the very instant the lightning stopped, the hurricane exploded with this terrifying fury. For Rogers, that was no coincidence. It was clear-cut evidence of cause and effect, a huge magnetic disruption unleashing the awesome power of the wind.
So let's just stop for a second. If you were to actually accept Rogers' grand magnetic circuit as reality, the consequences would be, well, they'd be absolutely mind-blowing. It wouldn't just change a few details in our science textbooks. It would mean tearing them up and starting from scratch.
I mean, really think about the scale of what he was saying. If he was right, it would mean that pretty much every major theory of astronomy and physics, both from his time and from ours, would be fundamentally completely wrong.
And here's what that would look like. The theory of how planets form from dust and gas? Just a figment of the imagination. The idea that the sun is a hot star? Nope, it's a cool, habitable world. The science of spectroscopy that tells us what stars are made of? That's just an illusion. The speed of light? It wouldn't even matter. Because in his universe, light and gravity work instantly over any distance. His cosmos was efficient, it was instantaneous, and it was absolutely teeming with life on every single planet and every single sun. It was a complete paradigm shift.
So, what do we do with all this? It's pretty fascinating that Dr. Rogers himself actually thought a lot about why his ideas were so wildly different from everyone else's, and honestly, his reasons are almost as interesting as his theories. He actually wrote a whole chapter with that exact title. You see, in his mind, his theory wasn't just an idea, it was a monumental discovery, a moment of pure, brilliant insight, and he was genuinely baffled as to why the rest of humanity had been stuck on the wrong path for so long.
His answer, when it came down to it, was simple: scientific dogma. He truly believed that scientists were just clinging to old, familiar ideas. He saw the established theories of his day as intellectual straitjackets that were blinding everyone to what he felt was a much simpler, more beautiful solution: his solution.
And to really make his point, he ended his book with this amazing quote from the celebrated scientist Michael Faraday. Rogers clearly saw himself as the one making that glorious discovery that Faraday had predicted. He genuinely believed he was achieving the ultimate dream of 19th-century science, to finally unite all the forces of nature under one single theory.
Now, let's be perfectly clear. Dr. Rogers' physics was not correct. The sun is, in fact, an incandescent ball of fire. But his work is still this incredible monument to human creativity and scientific ambition. It's a powerful reminder of that deep desire we all have to find a single, elegant explanation for everything, a grand, unifying theory. And it just goes to show that sometimes the most creative and comprehensive ideas can lead you to a completely different and totally fascinating alternate universe.